So we've talked in this 5-part series about what artificial general intelligence is. General intelligence, the ability to solve problems without being specifically trained for them. We've talked about the ladder to get to general intelligence, from narrow tools to broad tools within the domain, to expert level tools, to super intelligence. And we're still pretty low on that ladder. We talked about the things you could see happening, machines that are agentic in nature, that can solve problems autonomously. We can give them our biggest problems, solve this kind of cancer, come up with a vaccine for this disease. And we talked about the things that are probably going to go wrong, like structural unemployment or civil unrest. So to cap off this series, let's talk about the things that we can do, you and I can do, to minimize the risks as much as we can and hopefully reap as many of the benefits as possible. The important thing to remember is that artificial general intelligence is still man-made, right? It is still human-made, which means that we ultimately are the ones that have a say over how it develops and how it grows. There are a lot of people who are building these systems who, let's just call them ethically challenged. That's the polite term I would use. They are ethically challenged, and they are profit motivated to the exclusion of other objectives, of other outcomes. Our role as citizens, as people, as marketers, as business owners, as pillars of society, is to enforce some key principles around AI as it develops so that bad outcomes are less likely. What are those principles? Number one, transparency. This is an area where today's AI really sucks. Like, hey, how'd you make that model? What's in it? Where'd you get the training data? Did you have permission to use that training data? We don't have transparency in today's AI. That's something that has to change. And as buyers, as consumers, we have to talk with our wallets, right? If you have two models that are close-ish in performance, but one has that transparency, has the nutrition label that says exactly what's in the box, and the other one doesn't, we've got to vocally prefer the one that is telling us, here's how this model was made. Second thing is accountability. This is something we need to work out. Who is responsible when AI makes a mistake? Particularly a mistake that has serious consequences, like, say, a self-driving car just plowing into a crowd of pedestrians. Who's responsible for that? Who gets sued? That's something we have to work out. Number 3, we have to work out and request our various governments and things a taxation structure that accommodates machines, right? If a machine is going to do human labor, a machine should be taxed in the same way that human labor is, because when you and I work, we pay taxes. That money's got to come from somewhere. So if a machine works, that machine had better pay. Does the same work, it should be taxed the same. That allows for things like initiatives like basic income to exist. There are a lot of interests, particularly in capitalist societies, that don't want to see that happen because that will eat into their profits and margins, and that goes back to accountability. But if we want to have a society that's functional, that's something we got to focus on. Today's AI systems are optimized on a pretty squishy set of ethics. Helpful, harmless, truthful, right? Try and be helpful, try to be harmless, try to be truthful. And we all know they don't do a great job of that sometimes. We have to be much more clear about what the rules are of systems and have, if not universal, at least generally accepted best practices that most systems out of the box should adhere to. Think about Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, right? Those were classic for a reason, and the reason was they made so much sense. A machine will not harm, or through its inaction, allow harm to come to a human being, right? That is a logical and sensible thing. Helpful, harmful, harmless, truthful is kind of squishy when you compare it to Asimov's laws of robotics. And so a big part of what we need to do in optimizing AI is say, these are the principles that we want to optimize for very clearly, so that the models know what to do, particularly as they increase in sophistication, they increase in their reasoning capabilities. We've got to make sure that that's built into these systems. We also have to pay very close attention to how models deal with human biases, not statistical biases, that's a separate category, but human biases, things like fairness and justice, discrimination, when is it allowed, when is it not allowed? And answering these questions is going to vary based on the local context in a society. So as we build it and grow this technology, we'll have to adapt the technology to the societies it operates in. If you live in a society that has very different laws than the laws where the model was made, the model needs to be adapted to those laws and run locally within that society to adhere to what is considered acceptable, right? Ethics and morals are about alignment to what people generally accept as right or wrong, and that varies from society to society. And finally, as much as I think there's a lot to be said for independence and freedom, with machines, because they can have such consequences at such vast levels, they need much more strict regulation than humans do, right? A person, yes, can influence a lot of people, but a machine can influence way more people directly, hands-on. We saw this with social media, when social media algorithms optimized for view time and stickiness with no other considerations for ethics, said, well, great, let's make people angry and afraid all the time. And it works great for that algorithm. Does it work great for human well-being? No. So part of what we have to work on is having a framework for regulation around the machines. And again, there are some very moneyed interests who are not at all interested in that happening because it means reduced profits. But if we want a functioning society where we're not shooting each other all the time, we probably need to go down the route of policy and regulation, international cooperation, informed engagement about what these machines should be able to do and what things these machines must not do. One of the areas that I'm personally most concerned about, because I've seen rapid advancements happen in the last few years, is machines that have autonomous kill authority. We are seeing this happening in Ukraine. Now, to be very clear, I am a staunch supporter of a free and whole Ukraine, and to see Russia's campaign of terrorism expelled from that country and see the country restored as a whole. That's not negotiable. I want to see a free and whole Ukraine. However, to accomplish that, given the manpower differences, Ukraine has been very, very smartly digging into autonomous weapons that can make kill decisions on their own, without a framework in place to say, like, yeah, that's allowable or not. That is a very dangerous place for our species as a whole to have machines that have kill authority without very strict guidelines about that. The way Ukraine is using it is very smart. For example, a lot of the demos they've shown or so, that it's image recognition, for example, it's looking for a T-72 tank. It's not going to mistake someone's Prius for a T-72 tank, right? It's not going to accidentally bomb a Prius. But there's a pretty clear pathway to seeing how the screw-ups could go if the targeting is wrong, if the machine has general intelligence. It's like, you know what? Our objective is to secure this here. What if I just kill everybody? Right? A general intelligence might reach that conclusion. We don't want that. We need to have very, very strict regulation around autonomous weaponry. If we can overcome sort of the hyper-capitalist hellscape that a lot of folks seem to want, if we can overcome our all too human narrow interests when it comes to generative AI and to our general intelligence, we can make tools that will be very, very powerful for the common good. General intelligence that could say, hey, solve this disease, solve this particular climate problem, solve this cancer, solve this issue of this addiction issue. That's what we want to get to. But to get to that, we've got to leave behind our foibles that we've thus far dragged into our machines. I'll leave this series on this note. One of the things when I was in my younger years, I wanted to get my black belt in the martial arts, but I very specifically wanted to get my black belt before my first child was born. And the reason for that is the process of getting there in the martial arts tradition that I'm in is you have to leave behind a lot of things to get to that. In the school that I train in, the Boston Martial Arts Center with Master Instructor Mark Davis, the black belt test in our school is always about the thing you're worst at, right? So someone who's not an intellectual, their black belt test is like 3 hours of you have to do every technique precisely and recite the names in Japanese in order and so on and so forth. Someone who's not physical, your black belt test is you're going to run basically a half marathon and get beaten up along the way. You're afraid of fighting, or you're hesitant to fight. Your black belt test is just a brawl. Sensei Davis does an amazing job of creating a test that makes you face the things you don't want to face, to leave them behind, so that you can progress and elevate yourself. And so it was a very important thing for me personally to get through this process before my first child was born, because I knew in the back of my head, if I could do that, then there would be fewer of my own mistakes to pass on to my kid, right? Fewer of my own limitations as a person to pass on to my kid. I'm still going to do that to some degree, but if I could make a conscious effort to do less of that and leave behind the parts of me that were not as good, I would be creating better conditions for my kids to succeed because of who I am. This is how we should think about artificial general intelligence. As a civilization, as a species, what are the things we should leave behind so that as these machines skill up and grow up, they're not inheriting from us our worst aspects. They are instead inheriting from us our best aspects. That's what we got to figure it out. If we don't figure that out, it's going to be bad. And if we do figure it out, it's going to be awesome. So I hope that you take an active role in speaking up about the use of AI and the march towards general intelligence, and advocate for that perspective of transparency and accountability, fairness, justice, optimizing for human wellness, optimizing away from harming humans, even at the expense of profits, and sustainability. Thanks for tuning into the series. I'll talk to you on the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you want to know when new videos are available, hit the bell button to be notified as soon as new content is live.